Good afternoon, Springmore. I have a little story to tell you about a red pole. With bated breath, in the event that a fire alarm sounds, remain seated in the auditorium until directed by a Springmore staff member on when and how to exit. Please exit in an orderly fashion. Do not use the elevators. And once outside, go to a red pole. Yes. If you have not already done so, if you have a phone that looks like this with you, please find a way to put it on silent, close all the sound off so that you will not interrupt the program. And now we are going to hear some music from our Springmore singers.
You ready? Thomas Paine said, "What we obtain cheaply, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a price upon its goods. And it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. America, may we never forfeit our passion for freedom or lose the vision that God shed His grace on thee."
Wow, Springmore Singers, thank you so much. That was gorgeous, absolutely stirring. The Pathways team would like to welcome you all here and thank the Springmore Singers especially for providing the beautiful music today. The Japanese surrender was announced by Emperor Hirohito on August 15th and signed on this day, September 2nd, 1945, 80 years ago right now. During the war years, 1941 to 1945, over 16 million men and women served in the United States Armed Forces. As of mid-2025, the Department of Veteran Affairs, the VA, estimates that there are about 66,000 currently alive. Here at Springmore, we're proud to have two, Malcolm Williams and Walter Marinetti. Many, many more folks at Springmore, though, remember the war years and especially the end of World War II as children. The outpouring of stories that we have gotten from y'all, the memories, the photos, oh my gosh, y'all, I have read some of the best stories. Your memories coming through of the war, coming from a child's eyes, have been inspiring and humbling. You wrote about air raid sirens and air raid wardens. Many of you had air raid warden parents. Dark, dark nights. Sugar and gas rationing. That meant no bubble gum, no chocolate candy. News on the radio. Everybody and everything stopping to listen. Growing victory gardens. Patriotic music and putting your hand over your heart for the pledge. Scrap drives and war bond sales. Brothers, cousins, fathers, uncles away training or overseas and writing letters to soldiers. I wanted to share just a couple of the things that y'all wrote in. They were so good. This came from Carol Larson. The war influenced the way we kids played. We girls still played with dolls, jumped rope, played hopscotch, and generally played the same games that we would have played in peacetime. The boys, on the other hand, wanted to play commandos all the time. As commandos, we never walked down the sidewalks. Instead, we would run through the yards, jump over bushes, climb over the neighbors' porch railings, and run across or crawled under their porches. Isn't that what commandos do? Sometimes the neighbors complained, but not very often. I should also mention that we had a victory garden. These were usually small gardens in people's yards where they planted vegetables. The vegetables were used by families to reduce the amount of food that they bought at the grocery store. The surplus was sent to our troops and our allies, and this too was another way to support the war effort, so no one complained. This came from Jane Nichols, who I think I saw come in. This is about a very special homecoming. My Uncle George was coming home. He already had seen action in the North Atlantic and was moving to a new assignment in the South Pacific. He was stopping in New York on leave for Thanksgiving weekend. The whole neighborhood was abuzz. Our local Marine hero was coming home, and he would need a turkey dinner. But everyone was on ration stamps. Nobody had a turkey. It would cost too many stamps. So our whole street chipped in their meat stamps, and an elderly turkey was finally procured. No one else on our street and our neighborhood would have protein for the holiday weekend. Yet side dishes also found their way to our stoop. Fixings were gathered. Uncle George had his holiday dinner. East Columbia Street did their part. And that is just the tip of the iceberg, y'all. I have so many good stories that I can't even begin to tell them all to you. Now, quite a few of you don't remember the war years, but the war years remember you. Anybody want to guess how many Springmore residents were born in 1946 and 1947? Any guesses? 48. 48 Springmore residents were born in 1946 and 1947. You know who you are. And now I'd like to introduce our program speaker, someone I know really well, someone I've known all my life, Julia McCullers. She wrote this News from the Homefront to honor her maternal grandparents, whose 5 sons, 2 sons-in-laws, served in the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy between 1941 and 1945. World War II affected all Americans, including those who did not wear uniforms, but served their country in ways that were less traumatic. There's no doubt that their contributions made victory possible. This is a true story of how one North Carolina farm family, anybody else from Moore County original? No? None? All right. One North Carolina farm family faced the challenges of World War II with down-to-earth patriotism and stoical acceptance of a difficult time. And now I'd present to you one of my very favorite speakers in the whole wide world, Julia McCullers.
Afternoon. Yes, World War II officially ended with the signing of documents aboard the USS Missouri, a battleship, 80 years ago today, on September 2nd, 1945. Today, September 2nd, 2025, the war years 1941 through 1945 are times that those of us here at Springmore, some of us, remember in varying degrees. Some of us were children. Because I'm among friends, I will say that I was 8 years old when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and I was 11 years old when the war ended. But many of you had not even been born. You learned about World War II from your parents and grandparents and from history classes. So please let me share some of my memories of a time more than 8 decades past. So, visualize a weathered rural mailbox on the side of a narrow dirt road. The mailbox stands a few yards in front of an ordinary tin-roofed farmhouse that has a long front porch. Free-range chickens are in the yard, and there is a mimosa tree near the mailbox. Visualize a tiny wooden radio, battery-operated, of course, in the modest living room of a house where kerosene lanterns provide light and a fireplace provides heat. And recall that for most Americans on the home front, news about World War II came through radio or through letters delivered to mailboxes. No television, no cell phones, no computers. Perceptions of the war required imagination, the ability to convert spoken words heard on the radio or letters written in script into vivid images of a world in turmoil. Listen, if you will, to some memories of that time when Americans had groped their way out of the long, dark tunnel of the Great Depression and were suddenly thrust into the incredible urgency and terror of a war that we absolutely could not afford to lose. Listen, if you will, to some memories of that time and create pictures from the words that you hear. Close your eyes if you wish and let your memories come to you. Life-changing event after life-changing event crashed down on Americans everywhere after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. and Will and Dora Hurley, my maternal grandparents, were no exceptions. Their quiet lives on a farm in Moore County near Pinehurst were profoundly altered forever. As fate would have it, they had 5 sons and 2 sons-in-law who were the right age to be drafted into the armed services. The oldest of the boys was 32. The youngest was barely 18. By late summer of 1942, these 7 young men were wearing military uniforms and scattered to the 4 winds. One son-in-law, John, had been drafted into the Army and was in officer candidate school in Texas. Another son-in-law, Bill, a laid-back, easygoing fella, had somehow morphed into an Army military policeman stationed in California. Tom, my oldest uncle, the oldest Hurley boy, volunteered to become an Army munitions inspector. Putting his life in danger every day, he served on half a dozen military installations, both overseas and stateside. And Ben, the one who laughed a lot, Ben, who had been working for Carolina Power and Light, CP&L, before Pearl Harbor. He was drafted into the Navy and became a Seabee. He served in the South Pacific on a little island called Funafuti in the Marshall Islands. His group was in charge of building airfields. Fred, number 3, was drafted into the Army and became a medic in the 6th Armored Division. He followed General George Patton across Europe, experiencing the Battle of the Bulge and witnessing the freeing of Buchenwald, one of Hitler's most hideous concentration camps. Nelson, number 4, volunteered for the Navy and became a radioman on a dive bomber stationed on aircraft carriers, one of which was sunk in the Pacific. And Richard, barely 18, was stationed with the 8th Air Force in England, and his job was to help repair the bombers that limped back from daylight air raids over Nazi Germany. My grandparents hung a flag with 5 blue stars on their front door. They were proud to be the parents of 5 American boys who were physically fit and eager to fight for their country in a time of great need. And of course, they were proud of their 2 sons-in-law, but they could not find a flag with 7 stars on it, Sears Roebuck catalog notwithstanding. My grandmother had photographs of her boys in uniform on a table in the living room. It was almost like a shrine, a sacred place, or so it seemed to me, a child. In order to keep in touch with all the boys during the war years, my grandparents wrote letters, lots of letters. My grandmother, who did not own a car and who almost never visited a grocery store, much less the United States Post Office, wrote each son at least once a week. She wrote cheerful, newsy, matter-of-fact letters about the weather and the crops, and about Kate the mule and Tippy the dog, and about the new preacher at the church. She told about canning beans and picking Scuppernong grapes. And without intending to or planning to, she became the central clearinghouse for a far-flung family scattered around the globe. My grandmother wrote her letters after lunch each day. She addressed each envelope, whether it was intended for a boy in Germany or England or the South Pacific, in her unique and undisciplined handwriting. I heard her say once that her handwriting looked like a mule running away. And indeed it did. Each address was sprawled from one corner to the other of the envelope. On that North Carolina farm during 1941 through 1945, each day except Sunday was divided into two parts: before the mailman came and after the mailman came. The plain mailbox that fronted the edge of the yard became the focal point of each day. Mr. Melvin, the mailman, was almost like a member of the family, even though there was little actual conversation involved in his daily ritual of taking outgoing letters from the box and placing incoming mail inside. And because she was a farm woman who did not use cash money very often, my grandmother would sometimes slip a few fresh brown hen eggs in the mailbox, and Mr. Melvin would exchange them for postage stamps. This arrangement worked very well in 1943. While tanks rumbled across the deserts of North Africa and the hedgerows of Normandy, while ships tossed on stormy seas and countless planes were launched into unfriendly skies, my grandparents wrote their letters to their boys and listened for the mailman's car. My grandmother cooked 3 meals a day on a wood-burning stove, milked Bessie the cow, and tended her vegetable garden. My grandfather hitched Kate the mule to a plow and worked almost alone to see that the crops were made and to be sure there was plenty of firewood to stay warm in the winter. On the first and third Sundays, when there was preaching at their church, a neighbor who had a car came by and took my grandparents to church. 2 of the boys had left their cars behind. A Ford and a Chevy had been stashed in shelters near the house. My grandparents did not know how to drive, but they learned to start the cars and race the engines so that the batteries would stay fresh. While their sons were learning to operate sophisticated weapons of war, their parents led a simple life. Dora and Will Hurley, my grandparents, did not have electricity or a telephone, but they did have a battery-operated wooden radio, and the radio opened a window to the outside world, the world at war. Oh, but do not assume that the radio played all day. Oh, no. Saving the battery was a mandate that I, as a child, knew very well. The radio was usually turned on twice a day. Once for the world news broadcast over radio station WPTF in Raleigh. The sound of announcer H.V. Kaltenborn's voice still resonates in my ears. And once again, it was turned on at 6:30 each morning when my grandmother cooked breakfast and listened to a program called Daily Bread, which began with a plaintive rendering that went like this. For you I am praying, for you I am praying, for you I am praying, I'm praying for you. Now, Dora Hurley knew, of course she knew, that her own grandfather and two of his brothers had died as soldiers in the Civil War. Of course she knew that. But she did not deal in histrionics or hysteria or hand-wringing. If she ever looked up that dusty road and wondered if an ominous black-edged telegram from the War Department might someday be delivered, she never said anything about it. Instead, I trudged along beside her as she walked up the hill from the barn, and she sang, "Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine." So, during the war years 1941 through 1945, like so many other American families, my grandparents, went about the business of being farm people, adjusting to the changes of the seasons, as they always had, listening for the mailman's car, and leaning forward to hear the news on the radio. 4 years passed, and many, many letters had been written and received in this isolated corner of America. And words and places with profound meaning had been added to their vocabularies. Words such as blitzkrieg, Führer, Hirohito, Corregidor, Kamikaze, Stalingrad, Messerschmitt, D-Day, B-29, the Battle of the Bulge, Panzer, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Auschwitz, Dachau, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, and much more. But at last, in the spring of 1945, more than 80 years ago, victory over Germany came, and later in August of 1945, victory over Japan. The American military machine would be demobilized, and the boys, our boys, all seven of them, would be coming home. One day, in the early fall of 1945, one of my uncles, the one who had served with Patton's 6th Armored Division in Germany and France, the medic who had experienced the Battle of the Bulge and the freeing of prisoners from a Nazi death camp, the one who had always liked to laugh and who was very tender-hearted, phoned to tell my mother, not my grandmother, phoned my mother to say that he would be arriving at our home in Sanford by train and that he would need a ride to his parents' remote farm. My parents and we 3 children picked Fred Hurley up at the train station. He was, of course, in uniform, the olive drab of the United States Army. He had a sergeant's stripes on his sleeve and an overseas cap at a jaunty angle on his head. He had ribbons on his chest and a duffel bag that he tossed lightly over his shoulder. He was the same as I had remembered him, but different. He saluted my 4-year-old little brother, shook hands with my father, and engulfed my mother, his beloved oldest sister, in a vast hug. It was clear that this soldier, this brave man, wanted one thing above all else. He wanted to go home as quickly as possible. He had not told my grandparents that he was coming. He wanted to surprise them. My father understood. Fred got into the passenger seat of our 37 Chevy, and the rest of us tumbled into the back seat. It was twilight. We rode 30 miles or so through the gathering darkness toward that one spot on this terrestrial globe where this farm boy soldier wanted to go. Home. Home. It was very dark, as we drove at last down the unpaved lane that led to the farmhouse. My grandparents, having worked hard all day, had already gone to bed. The farm was dark. There were no street lights, only a few stars keeping their ageless vigil. The car coasted to a stop. My uncle stepped quietly out of the car and did not slam the door. He looked for what seemed a long, long time at the dim outline of the farmhouse that he had thought about so many times during the 4 years that he had been away. He put down his duffel bag. He took off his cap. Then he stepped away from the car into the total darkness. We, my family, and I as a child, could hear that brave, sweet man sobbing into the stillness of a North Carolina night. And that, to me, was how World War II ended. God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more selection from our Springmore singers, so stay in place for just another moment, if you will. And then, in true Springmore fashion, we have cookies. So, out both doors. So, I give you once again the wonderful Springmore singers. That is our finale. Thank you so much for joining. And please let me continue to encourage you to send in your stories. We are collecting them. We will be putting them into the displays here in front of the auditorium. And I'm going to, spoiler alert, we're going to make a book. So please, please continue to send your memories of World War II. And thank you so much for making this your event. Springmore Singers, Springmore Storytellers, we appreciate you.